this road is very demonstrative of why you want to win in the regular season. Sometimes you just get this. It's great. Like, that's the one thing that's killed me. People are just, wow, they have the easiest road. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens when you just have the best record. It's awesome. You guys should try it. It's great.
Celtics Week is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
All right, everybody, welcome in another edition of Celtics Beat. Yes, we wanted to wait till Sunday. We considered coming at you midweek after the Celtics, as expected, almost easily wrapped up things with the Cleveland Cavaliers. We figured, why not wait and wait and wait and wait until we actually know who they're going to play. It took a Game 7 between the Knicks and the Pacers to find out, and earlier today, it went final just a little while ago. Sure enough, the Indiana Pacers, the Dogs, came away with the win. I'll tell you what, I was rooting for it to be the Knicks. I wanted the Boston, New York sort of regional rivalry more so than there's actually a rivalry on the court these days. I wanted it. I wanted the story, and I wanted to talk about Jalen Brunson. I wanted to talk about Tibbs and just how banged up that roster is. And well, we're not going to have it. Instead, we're going to have a relatively fresh and certainly fast-paced Pacers on the other side. But before you get worried, before you get scared about what is to come after the Celtics, 2 series wins in 5, dispatch Miami, dispatch Cleveland, whereas Indiana's had to work a bit harder, taking care of the very shorthanded Bucks in 6, and of course, the very shorthanded Knicks in 7. The Celtics, for those interested in odds, opened as overwhelming favorites. Minus 1,400 series favorites to take care of the Pacers. So there is no respect from Vegas whatsoever for Indiana. It is a foregone conclusion. Boston is going to the NBA Finals. Question is, do we agree? Will this be a fight? Adam Himmelsbach is here at the Boston Globe. Now, you may be thinking, twice in one season? Really? This is, I mean, you guys always do your season preview with Himmelsbach, and that's great, and we love it. But to what do we owe the pleasure of him being here with us in the playoffs, no less? And I mentioned this to Ev. I said, Ev, brace yourself. Himmelsbach is coming on with us to talk about the conference finals. And he said, we're getting ahead of our annual appearance early for next year. We're knocking it out when the stage is big. No. I didn't even want to respond to the text. I wanted to save it for the show. That's not it, Ev. Himmelsbach, unprompted, texted me, and he said, you know what? And I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. He said, you know what? You guys, you're the only show that I do. You're the only show that I do, and I want to do it more. I want to come on more often. And so he's, I mean, can we call him a regular? It's hard to say. It's early, but Himmelsbach, welcome back. I hope this is the, first of multiple playoff appearances on the way to Banner 18.
That's a loose paraphrase, but you guys are the only show I did. But didn't we have a deal, Plenty? Like if Syracuse football won like 10 games or something last year, I would come on twice.
So I think it was maybe 2 years ago because I got off that quick 6-1 start.
Maybe it's just,
I don't think they won again after that.
No, they did not.
We're just speaking that into existence maybe a little early. We're going to see what happens.
Right.
We're going to reverse it. We're going to come on twice and pretend like the 10 wins are on the way. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, guys.
There you go.
So let's get into this. Obviously, it's exciting, and we have had to wait. The Celtics are going to be off, by game standards for basically an entire week before the conference finals begin on Tuesday. And at that point in time, it's every other day, which is always nice. So we've got a couple fun weeks in front of us here, and hopefully another month and a half of Celtics basketball to talk about. But we can, project ahead and get to all of that stuff in a bit. Right now, as far as Boston versus Indiana goes, just general series expectations, Himmelsbach, because I wanted New York. I mentioned that, but it's not just all the narrative stuff that I mentioned before. It's the fact that while I do think New York is a better team than Indiana, they're also just so incredibly banged up with half of that rotation either missing or hurt and unavailable that I'm not above the whole easiest path thing. I'm not. And I wanted the Celtics to kind of coast into the NBA Finals. And I think Indiana, well, either way, Celtics should win, whether it was the Knicks, Pacers, whatever. Celtics should win, shouldn't go 7, shouldn't even need Porzingis. The Celtics should display who they are. But I still think the Pacers could put up a fight.
Yeah, can we, since we're not going to have 2 weeks of Knicks talk, can we spend like 90 seconds to lament that we won't be getting the Knicks? Like,
please,
go ahead. That's just crushing to all of us. We wanted to be in New York, first of all. Madison Square Garden, you've seen it. Even if you hate the Knicks, MSG has been absolutely alive during these playoffs more than any other arena. These people are like starved for finally having a team that's worth watching. And they're a fun team. They play hard, but just absolutely ravaged by injuries. I was actually thinking, imagine the Knicks got out to a big lead today and then Brunson broke his hand and was out and they were playing the Celtics. Like this team has already been just demolished, like unlike anything you've ever seen. Now all of a sudden they don't have Jalen Brunson. So I guess in that sense, in terms of having a fun series, it would have lost the juice pretty quickly. So tough hit for all of us. But yeah, look, like people are going to come up. I just wrote this, like the Celtics in the next few days are going to be really smart and talking about how dangerous the Pacers are. And they're a good team, but let's be honest. They beat a destroyed Bucks team. They beat a destroyed Knicks team. They kind of took it to the end in this series. The previous one went 6. If you're the Celtics, you have to feel great that this is what's standing in front of you right now before reaching the NBA Finals.
Yeah, it's a nice contrast to the years where they had to go through. You go through the Brooklyn Nets, and then you get Giannis and the Bucks, and then you get Miami. Like, I mean, my goodness, like this is just a nice contrast to that. And Boston has a great opportunity in front of them. I will say today's game is a reminder of what the Pacers can do from game to game. Will they can sustain that for an entire series? I'm not sure about that. But like, please just take note that like Tyrese Halliburton's an excellent player, and he can clearly still dominate a game. I know he hasn't been the same guy since he got hurt earlier in the year, but he still has capabilities, and that team can really shoot. Like that team shoots the hell out of it. I think Boston has a nice advantage because they've seen Pascal Siakam so much in the playoffs recently. That's going to be a big help for them. But Miles Turner can hit threes. Hallie can get hot real quick. They have a good energetic bench that changes the energy of the game when they come out. That's they should win, but don't let today's game like just be like, oh yeah, whatever, game 7. There's some talent in Indiana for sure.
And with Halliburton, like he's the first. This series was like the first time he's looked like pre-hamstring injury Halliburton at times. He wasn't great the whole series, but he had flashes. He scored more than 30 points twice since his injury, both in this Knicks series. He hadn't done that since January, whatever. He came back like January 15th or something like that. Like he's at least showing little bursts of, remember in-season tournament Tyrese? People were talking about him like an MVP candidate, a first-team All-NBA guy. That's this season. And obviously, he hasn't been the same player. But if they can get bursts of that, it's going to help them have a chance to maybe steal one. You mentioned the bench. Celtics fans hate TJ McConnell. We're all ready for the TJ McConnell, Peyton Pritchard matchups. They do have a solid bench. They're a good team. But it's to have that be all that's standing in your way of reaching the NBA Finals that they're really not at that level, I don't think.
What are the general game-to-game expectations? And obviously, those will evolve as the series actually starts and goes on. But as you sort of take the 10,000-foot view going into it, and what I mean by that is, from a betting perspective, for instance, and I don't want to make this conversation about betting, but I bring it up for this reason. In the Knicks-Pacers series, the safest, most reliable, like cash cow of a bet that I played every game was the over. The totals were so low. It was, at points in time, like today, was 207 and dropping as the game was getting closer. And we saw, I don't even know how many points in this game, like 250 or something like that. It was crazy because the Pacers run, and they do not defend. Whereas the Celtics, as we know, are among the top teams in the entire league defensively, have certainly a lot more just discipline and stick-to-itiveness and all of that when it comes to that side of the basketball. What does this game look like? Are we going to get lower scoring games, or do you think it's going to be a little more representative of what we just saw between the Pacers and the Knicks?
It's interesting you say that because the Pacers actually, and obviously I don't have the numbers from today, but their pace during these playoffs has been extremely low, which pace, for those who don't know, is basically possessions per 48 minutes per game. It's in the mid-90s. Their pace during these playoffs would have been the slowest pace in the NBA by like 2 possessions this season, which is surprising. So a couple factors there. One, that happens in the playoffs in general. 2, the Knicks are a slower paced team, so that skews that a little bit. But still, it was kind of surprising to me. Like today's game, part of the reason they had so many points is they didn't miss a shot.
Right.
and they were like 80% through like the most of the first half. So I don't necessarily think that's like a tactical move necessarily by Rick Carlisle, but look, you look, why do NCAA upsets happen? For two reasons. One, there's one game, and anything can happen in one game. And two, it's a 40-minute game with a longer shot clock. When you reduce, possessions in a game, it creates more chances for craziness to happen. So I'm not saying that's what the Pacers are doing by any means, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, to me, just Boston staying disciplined, as Kaufman kind of talked about earlier. Like, this is a team that's just not. I mean, again, I'm almost dumbfounded by how bad defensively Indiana is from time to time, because it looks like at times it's like they have Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam, who played defense for Nick Nurse, and there should be, like, we all loved, despite the fact that he was billed to be. Aaron Nesmith at least defended his ass off, or at least tried to. He at least put the effort in. It seems like this team has capable defenders on it, but they just don't play defense at all.
Yeah.
And Boston, shouldn't fall in love with anything. It almost feels like they might get 2-3 happy, with the amount of open shots they're going to have. I'm not quite. It's going to be a little wonky, I think, but I still think Boston talent is going to be ridiculous. But it's going to be a little weird, I think, to start. I'm curious how Boston comes out in game one for sure. And then we always have the game two mishap. So, let's see how that looks in this series.
Yeah, so the Pacers are a terrible defensive rebounding team too. So that helps the Celtics if they have one of those just rough shooting nights, which is probably going to come along. They'll have a chance to make up for that. They kind of crash a little bit. But you're right. Like, the Pacers, I think, they're the only team in the bottom 10 in defensive rating this year that even made the playoffs. Like, their defense is horrendous. It's not, and it hasn't really gotten better during these playoffs. So the Celtics have plenty of opportunities to get past that first wall, get to the paint, whether there's layups there. Like you said, Miles Turner can protect the rim, spray the ball out to shooters. Like, they're gonna be some high scoring games. I think they scored like 115 or more in all 5 games against the Pacers this year, and I feel like that's pretty indicative of kind of how things should go.
Quick break from today's show to tell you today's show is powered by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like Meek Mill and Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, now you can find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community every single week, and get on all the playoff action for basketball and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during the postseason. You can now bet up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Turn $10 into 1,000 with basketball, with hockey, baseball, on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And Prize Picks is now the official daily fantasy sponsor of CLNS. And thanks for a new partnership, our listeners get a pretty sweet new deal to sign up with Prize Picks. Just download the app, use the promo code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 after you download the app. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
So you're on the beat, you're in the locker room, you're talking to people all the time, obviously very well connected. You also are putting out on the Globe's website the instant, analysis and observations at the end of many of these games. And so, I think as you look back at the regular season, the Celtics, they went 3-2 against the Pacers. These teams have not matched up since the end of January. So it's been quite a while. Lots happened on both sides, both teams. Like we said, Halliburton hasn't been the same guy. The Celtics don't have Porzingis, at least currently, and he's expected to miss at least the first 2 games of this series, maybe longer, depending on where the Celtics sit. There's certainly no interest in rushing him along. You want him available for the NBA Finals, presuming that you do get there, and you want him to be at full strength and as much so as possible. Very just sort of interesting games, I think. I mean, the Celtics, that 4th, 5th game of the season, whatever it was, when they won by 50, fine, that's an aberration. There were 2 other games in which, single digits split. Celtics had another kind of blowout win. Pacers had a 10-point win. Ultimately, it was 3-2 Boston, the regular season series. Is there anything to take from any of those matchups, going into this series beyond just the old coach speak of reviewing the tape and all of that? Or were they just so long ago they don't even matter and you just sort of review what's happened in the postseason?
Yeah, I think the so long ago is a factor, but also kind of like you alluded to, the Pacers are just a totally different team. Like you look at those box scores, you see Buddy Hield in them, you see Bruce Brown in them. Bruce Brown was a Pacer, remember? Like Benedict Mathurin, of course, is out for the year. Siakam only played in one of the 5 games, I believe. So it's just completely different team combined with just so long ago, the teams have evolved since then. So I wouldn't pull too much except for the fact that, you know, you haven't seen necessarily a big schematic change with the Pacers during this time. Like they didn't suddenly become, you know, a lockdown defensive team or anything like that. Their approach has remained pretty similar, despite some personnel changes. But, you know, they've been better. I think they're 500 with Siakam and whatever they finished up, they have 47 wins or something. So they're obviously a better team with him in the lineup. But I wouldn't glean too much from those results that were so long ago. The 155-point game, that was still crazy when I think about that. That's the second most points Celtics ever scored in the game, like ever.
Well, they had that game. Was it the Indiana game? Not Indiana. It was the Hawks game, right? That was like 157, 155 or whatever. That was at some point in the season, right?
Wait, they topped 155. So they topped 155 twice.
Oh, the Pacers, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
Pacers,
there's that crazy game against Atlanta in the year at some point, I think, right? Or am I missing the year? I know they have one game that's just way.
No, you are right. There was a stretch of like 2 weeks where the scoring was off the charts in every Pacers game. It was like the totals for those games were like 250. It was nuts. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I can look it up while we're chatting. But well, I mentioned Porzingis. Let's go there for a second. I know obviously you and your Celtics beat brethren were over at practice today, and there's footage that trickled out of him on the bike and all of that. What are, in terms of what you've heard, and I know medically it's just kind of one of those things that you don't really know until you know. And I've sort of said I'm not taking the whole Porzingis return thing seriously until I see an injury report where he's at least listed as questionable, as opposed to the auto out. I don't care until he's listed as questionable. And then you sort of get into that Jared Allen territory where it's like, so you're saying there's a chance. So right. What's the belief for him in terms of, if and when we will see him?
Yeah. I put out back when the injury happened, everyone was looking for like a timeline right away. And they thought it was weird that there wasn't one. And I thought it was a little strange too, because generally even the Celtics, they'll put out a little release saying it, will be reevaluated in X time or something like that.
Right.
And I talked to several people around the organization, around Porzingis, and they're like, look, we're not doing it because just nobody knows right now. It's going to be a thing where we're just going to go with it as it goes along. It's not a matter of like not wanting to set expectations. They just weren't sure how he's going to respond. I don't know calf strains that well, but this guy's also 7'3", like has obviously dealt with some injuries in his career. He's an essential part of them winning a title eventually, so you knew they're going to be cautious. But from everything I've heard, he's just making good progress. There have been no setbacks. We did see him on the bike today before, was it shoot around before game 4 in Cleveland? We saw him doing a shooting workout that was a little more intense than the one we saw in Auerbach Center a week before, when people were spooked, when he was just like standing on one leg and not even putting any weight on his right leg. The Cleveland one, he was, it was more of a shooting workout, a lot of movement involved. So it seems like he's making the good strides. You just don't know, what he's actually feeling. He says I feel great, but in terms of getting to the point of playing in a game. But like you mentioned, Adam, just the idea of having this luxury, knowing you're the odds guy. If they ruled him out right now for the rest of the series, my guess is they would still be substantial favorites against.
Nothing would change. I think the odds are currently, written as though Porzingis isn't even going to play.
Right.
He's not considered a factor in this series. You get to the NBA Finals, that's a different story.
Right. So if you're the Celtics, my view of it, let's say you sit him out these first 2, ideally you get a couple wins. We've seen even if you lose 1 with this team at home, there's a good chance it won't matter. Then maybe you find a way to get him in later in the series, play 15 minutes or so, get him some run, get some rust off. Because I don't think you'd want to have his first game action back at game 1 of the NBA Finals. But unless that's what's required, if he's not ready yet, he's not ready yet, and you will get a break. I think game on the finals is like June 6th or something, so we still are, whatever that is, 18 days away from that.
Yeah, that's huge. Any day, like any more time, it worked out perfectly for Boston. How both the semifinals for both sides, they both went 7, so everything worked out well for Boston. The more time, even better. You know, I do think they might struggle a little bit without Porzingis in this particular series. I think it's not like a slam dunk thing, but the one thing they won't be able to do is have Porzingis get killed on some of these screens, because you know he gets one-on-one with Halliburton on far away from the basket. It's not going to be pretty, but I prefer.
But let me push back on that for a second. Like, sure. What is struggling a bit? Is it winning in 6 versus winning in 5? Is it games are a little bit closer? Like, I can't imagine that if I said to you, Ev, Porzingis isn't playing the series, your opinion as to whether or not they're going to win it changes.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think at season 6 versus season 5 or season 4, I guess, then sure. But I just would prefer if it were, I don't know, just I guess a tad bit easier. I guess if we had, again, I got so into the Knicks thing because I was like, man, this is gonna be great. The Knicks are gonna be absolutely shot. This is not gonna matter. I have a slightly different concern about Indiana just because of offensively, like they can get you in a pretzel pretty quick, and you know they haven't been the best road team, right? Except for Game 7, but again, it took all those injuries for them to win a Game 7. And Boston, on the flip side, what's been really interesting about Boston is they're just awesome on the road in the playoffs. Like, it's just, I almost prefer them on the road in the playoffs. You know what I mean? It's there's a little bit more comfort there. Like, it's a little strange to me, the Game 2 dropping thing and then just recorrecting in games 3 and 4 on the road, which I don't think Boston has gotten any credit for at all since the playoffs started, by the way. Like, everybody wants to, they always drop one at home. Like, yeah, but they also, for 2 straight rounds, have righted the ship and just been like, oh, yeah, that's our one blip. We're fine. We're going to get this thing over with. Like, I know people have poked holes, and again, I think we all have spent time. But at the same time, I do, instead of poking holes, Himmelsbach, I think we have to at least give the Celtics a little bit of credit for, because I think in years past, they wouldn't have been able to turn it around the way they have on the road this year.
Yeah, I think that's right. And even today, Joe Mazzulla was asked something about home court struggles, just being like, hey, or he talked to the guys about making sure they're figuring it out at home. And he goes, look, we've lost 2 games at home. Like, it's not like we're getting walloped and been a disaster at home. He's like, we have one of the best home records in the playoffs right now. They've lost 2 games the whole playoffs. Obviously, if I'm a Celtics fan, I think if my concern right now would be the lack of intense playoff feel, intense playoff competition, because more likely than not, if it's the Wolves or the Nuggets in particular, it's going to arrive like suddenly, and it could be a jolt to the system. So I think there is some value in having that. We talked about the lack of, like, they hadn't played even clutch games until late in that Cleveland series. They haven't had like those high pressure moments yet where you feel it. And sometimes with this team, like in the past, you see them feel it. And that was the home struggles last year. You see TD Garden rocking, going bananas in the first quarter, then things go bad and the energy flips, and it's this uneasy, like, silence, sometimes boos, and then things unravel. Like, I feel like they kind of need to go through something. I shouldn't say need to. I think they would benefit in some way from going through something. But having said all that, it's also fine to just beat the piss out of teams and go to the NBA Finals, like, realistically.
Quick break from today's show to tell you today's show is brought to you by Game Time. The NBA playoffs are here. I don't know about you guys. I am dying to get my hands on some tickets to any one of these playoff games for the Celtics. I would love to be inside TD Garden to experience the atmosphere, and with Game Time, it's never been easier or faster to get playoff tickets. And prices on Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. And with last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can pick out any game you want. It doesn't matter. You find the game, they have tickets for you, okay? No question about it. And you can even customize your spot, look for some inspiration from Game Time. Let's say, like, hey, I want to have this view, but that's what I'm really looking for. You can limit it. You can narrow your focus down to zone deals. You can buy flash deals. Or you can view from your seat, and lowest price guaranteed. every single time. They have last-minute deals you can save to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. It's not just NBA. I know we're, an NBA podcast, but you can get, let's say, Sebastian Maniscalco's coming around. You want to see that guy in concert. He's hilarious. I look into it. And you can save even more when you choose a section like Game Time. Choose the seats for you with some sweet zone deals. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. The redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Quick break to tell you, today's show is brought to you by Arena Club. It's not easy being a fan of trading cards, of ripping open packs or ripping open repacks. It's all hyped up, this world of just opening a pack and having a Michael Jordan or a Wayne Gretzky or whoever your favorite rookie card is fall right into your lap. But with zero transparency on available cards and hit rates, it's just all a shot in the dark, man. Until right now, introducing slab packs from arenaclub.com, the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Now when I buy a slab pack at Arena Club, it finally feels like I know what I'm getting, that mystery box feeling, right? Like, I understand you watch these unpacking videos and part of it is like, oh, I want to see this guy's stupid face when he doesn't get anything. Or I want to see what happens that one time you pull that something that's super valuable. That feeling, no longer there. You know what's replaced with? One that makes you feel better. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. And after your pools are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your vault for safekeeping, for trading, and selling. You can have them officially graded by Arena Club. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase by going to arenaclub.com/CLNS. Crazy offer. 10% off. A $4 slab pack. That's $40 right there. That's arenaclub.com/CLNS for 10% off your first purchase.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sitting here and, we've been talking for 20 minutes or whatever, and I feel like, because I know some of our listeners, viewers on the CLNS Media YouTube page, can get aggravated with me being, just obnoxious Boston guy at times with respect to the Celtics team. So I've been sort of trying to curb that and sort of give the Pacers their respect, their flowers, all of that. And I don't want to say it's not deserved, but I mean, let's really think about, at least to this point, and this is not even me projecting forward. Let's just think about what has happened so far through the first two rounds of the playoffs. The Celtics, for whatever reason, we all know this, are good for one no-show, effortless appearance, per series. And they have had those in game twos so far, both against the Heat and the Cavaliers. And both cases, we came back and we did this show with the series at 1-1. And in the first round said, Boston's going to win the next three. Don't worry about it. And in the second round said, Boston might win the next three. Maybe it will take to game six, but probably not. And we're right. On the other side, this, I look at what happened with the Pacers today, and I want to applaud their resolve and really, like, shout out what they accomplished and this historic shooting game and all of that. But, you said it earlier. They had to go 6 games against a decimated Bucks team that didn't have Giannis the entire time, didn't have Lillard for half that series, didn't have, Portis for a fraction of that series. And then this Knicks series where there's no Randall and no Robinson, there's like Brunson gets hurt today in game 7. Their Hart is hurt. Anunoby misses time. Precious Achiuwa has to freaking start games in this series. Miles McBride is getting meaningful minutes. And I'm sorry, like you had to go 7 with that group. So the more I think about this, the more obnoxious I at least mentally get about it. I don't know how Boston takes longer than 5 games to wipe out these Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, like, if I was setting the series now, I'd be like 4.5, over under 4.5, honestly. Like it could, if it goes 6, it wouldn't stun me. Even go back to that Heat game, like, yeah, their effort wasn't great defending the 3, but that was also part of a tactical decision. they wanted to dare those guys to try to make threes, and they just happened to make them at a higher rate than most teams would in that situation. They could easily have won that game, despite their whatever you want to call it about effort. And then we're talking about a sweep in a 5-game series. It's hard. It's just hard to envision a situation where this Pacers team really is going to cause them significant problems, because in addition to anything else, the Celtics have played well all season long. Like, this is a team that hasn't had a 3-game losing streak all year. Like, I think we talk about credit, Evan. Like, they probably don't get enough credit for just destroying the competition all year, regardless of what was going on. And that's really what they've done, aside from this team's banged up, this team's the 6th seed, this team doesn't deserve it. All that aside, this is a very, very good Celtics team.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, this road is very demonstrative of why you want to win in the regular season. Sometimes you just get this. It's great. Like, that's the one thing that's killed me. People are just, wow, they have the easiest road. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens when you just have the best record. That's awesome. You guys should try it. It's great. So, kudos to the Celtics.
Something to be said for sustainability.
Well, look at Miami, right? And Jimmy Butler, who doesn't take the regular season as seriously. You got to reevaluate that now, because it's like you can't just be the 8th seed and go to the finals every year. That's really hard to do. So, kudos.
Yeah, it's in the NHL. It doesn't happen in the NBA, not really. No. So, Himmelsbach, we got you a few more minutes. I do want to project ahead, at least in this sense. I don't want to just, I personally assume that the Pacers are going to be a pushover, but for anyone out there that doesn't believe that, fine. Just know that, again, Boston is widely, overwhelmingly expected to reach the NBA Finals. I don't want to talk about, what if the Nuggets, what if the Timberwolves, because by the time people listen to the show, Game 7 is going to be over and we will have resolution there. But what I do believe, and I feel like you feel the same just based on the way that you answered that previous question, I feel like whoever it is, Nuggets or Wolves, that's who's going to the NBA Finals from the West. Either of those teams is beating the Dallas Mavericks. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I feel pretty confident in that. Dallas has played great. They've went on a nice run. I said all along, I was like, the first time Oklahoma City, it was like months ago, like the first time they play a team that has like a few veterans that have been there, I got to see them having a tough time. They're just a couple of years away. But it wasn't a surprise to me that Dallas beat them. And Dallas has been great. Like, Luka's been great. Kyrie's been great. They have some young players. PJ Washington, they made some huge additions as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to me, it feels like Celtics, Timberwolves, and Nuggets are on just a different plane than everybody else at the moment. We'll see what that means.
It's a tie. It's well, right now it's as of this recording, it's 15-12 Timberwolves. So it's going to be now 15-14.
Oh wow, live updates.
It's going to be
over.
Well, it's going to be a tight game. It's just going to be a fun one to watch. Yeah. It's good. I would agree with all of that in terms of Boston being in the same tier as these two teams. I think Denver has a little flaw to them this year. They're a little bit more human versus this Timberwolves team that just feels like a freight train. So it's exciting either way. And whoever they get, it's going to be a tough test. And I would prefer if Boston was just the healthier team at that point. That'd be really great because, health has been a problem for a lot of teams this year.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Getting through this series, okay. Like, that's another obviously benefit to making quick work of the Pacers. I think you're right. I think the Wolves are a scarier team in general, but I think the Nuggets, you can't discount the championship experience they now have, and that they have the best player in the world, in my opinion.
I personally would fear the Nuggets more than the Wolves, but whatever. We'll have that conversation if and when we get to that point. But before we do let you go, again, you have access that we don't have, and you're there every day, and you have these relationships. I'm just curious, because this team, for some reason, in stupid local sports talk, gets vilified for it's like these comparisons already to the Buffalo Bills. Like, how great is it to get to a certain level every single year if you never win? At that point in time, is it more of a detriment? And to what level are you a disappointment? And yada yada yada. I would prefer to, at least right now, because they could win a championship, celebrate the successes of going to the conference finals, 5 out of the last 7, 6 out of the last 8 years. And in particular, these last couple of years when it has been this core at the head of the snake, meaning, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, it is their team. How has this run and sort of their mentality at this stage, based on what, you can grasp anyway from these guys, how's it compare right now to falling woefully short, in my opinion, last year, and, really kind of giving away an opportunity the year before in the NBA Finals against the Warriors?
That's a good question. With Jayson and Jaylen in particular, they're not, as you said, like even their press conferences, not very emotional guys. It's hard to kind of get a gauge on how they're feeling about something. But I will say, in general, the team and the whole organization really has had a very business-like approach this year, all year long. Part of that is there aren't as many, fiery characters and guys who are going to stir things up. There isn't a voice like Marcus Smart, which I admit I got wrong. I thought not having him, not that they wouldn't be a very good team, but I thought you would feel the impact of not having a voice like that. A guy who, when they're losing by 10 with 3 minutes left, would be like the emotional leader of a comeback. They haven't missed Marcus this year, but they've just been very businesslike in everything they've done. We talk about the fact they haven't lost 3 games in a row all year. Like a loss comes, they refocus. There was never Joe said all year long, he would say things like, the tough times are going to come. We just got to be ready for them. They really never came. And this team just stayed ready, basically with this end goal in mind. And even each round of these playoffs, they've won these games, they've won these 2 series. Afterwards, you would have had no idea if you just walked in the press room that it was any different than like a December 8th game against the Hornets. That's how it felt. Because they know there's bigger things ahead, and it's been so long that that's where all of their focus is right now.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. Every game in the playoffs felt like it's like a December 8th game against the Hornets on Monday night on NBA TV.
Oh yeah, no offense to the Hornets people, as we talked about.
Charles Lee,
they're not listening. Yeah, Charles Lee isn't listening. I don't think. Maybe he is. Maybe he's just, yeah, he could be. I mean, maybe he's just a huge Himmelsbach fan. He wants to tune in because he's here. We're not above guest-driven listeners. That's okay. You can get Himmelsbach on Twitter at Adam Himmelsbach. Easy enough to find. He is must-read. We've said this for a long time. Whether or not he's on with us, we're big fans, supporters of your work, and he is as plugged in as anybody. So when there's a reason that our buddy who was on with us last week, Dan Greenberg, Stool Greeny, anytime that there's any sort of news relating to the Celtics, it's but has Himmelsbach tweeted anything yet? We wait for it. We want like you said, we wanted the update, the timeline on Porzingis. We patiently wait for those updates. So turn those notifications on. Himmelsbach will know when we're going to see Kristaps back in the lineup. But our new weekly guest on the program, it's great to have him here.
All right, let's calm down a little bit.
All right. Like I said, conference finals begin on Tuesday. I'm just glad to have the Celtics back at it, especially after the Bruins let us down. At least we have some postseasons around here to continue chasing that banner. And for Evan, for Adam, I am Adam Kaufman. You can get our podcast wherever you get your podcast. Just search Celtics Beat, rate, review, most importantly, subscribe, and let's hope the season on Tuesday start off strong at home so that there is even less pressure on Porzingis and maybe a little less pressure on the road at that. Go Timberwolves, maybe. We'll see you later.